I'm DavidCichelli. I'm with the Alexander Group, and I have a kind of an interesting presentation for you. And this is being directed to all of you who are vice presidents in sales and CROs, or if you're a person that helps a CRO or helps a VP of sales. And the topic is really what makes a successful VP of sales? What makes a successful CRO? And I'm going to share with you some observations, and I do have a challenge for you. The challenge would be, I'm going to obviously give you lots of content. Okay, so here's the challenge I'm going to suggest to you, that you get at least take away one good idea and maybe one action item. That would be a successful use of your time. And I'm encouraging you to kind of listen and sort of shop some of the things I'm going to be sharing with you, and then you can then take those and hopefully apply them at your company or help the leader that you work with at your company. Okay, so I have a question for you, and that is, how does the CRO spend their time? And so there's a bunch of things. I've just kind of broke it out into major categories. So we're going to come back to our friends here over on the right-hand side. But, you know, we do a lot of things like execution excellence, investments, and revenue leader. And what I'm going to be spending my time on is this 10% revenue leadership. But frankly, those of us who have to lead sales organizations, we do a lot of break fix. Well, what does that mean? Well, we have a problem with a customer, or we have some type of challenges. So I know you're looking at those toast. If you keep looking at them, it's like a TikTok video. I apologize. Okay. So, you know, you have to address a lot of things. You have a turnover, you have a customer issue, and frankly, you can't escape it. But then there's just a lot of execution excellence. There's a sales process that we have that we want to make sure that we do better. We're trying to improve our productivity. And we're always making some form of investments of certain types. Maybe it's a training or tech tools or something like that. But what I want to focus on is the revenue leadership quadrant. So execution excellence. If you ask a sales leader what their most important thing they're trying to do is improve sales productivity. That's a question I've asked for years from sales leaders in a survey that I conduct each year. What's your number one objective? Improving sales productivity. And that's basically about getting, you know, the I's dotted and the T's crossed. There's just a lot of things about a field sales organization or inside sales team or customer service group that, you know, if we can just do the blocking and tackling well, we would be much better off. So on to the question, though, what we're going to talk about is, so what's this 10% you're talking about, David? What do you mean revenue leadership? And I don't know, what do you think it means? So let me give you maybe some suggestions. Well, what is it about? Sales enablement, you know, about training our people better? And there's no end to the populations of content that might be associated with improving how your salespeople are performing. And there are courses that you can take and training providers and even your own internal people. So maybe, is that sales leadership? Maybe. Okay. I'm going to leave it in the yes column. Okay. But maybe it's more execution excellence. Or what about this? This is Nancy Nardine, and she publishes this tech stack. So is it all about getting new technology for our salespeople or improving how we're linking things together? Maybe. Okay. But I'm going to say maybe that's more about execution excellence also. Or what is it? Maybe it's the national sales meeting that you conduct each year and getting everybody together and fired up. Maybe, but I'm going to give you some different perspectives. I'm going to say all those things are important, all those things you need to do. But what about this leadership question, David? What are you trying to share with us? Okay, so let me move on here. So I just want to tell you where I'm coming from. So the Alexander Group is sort of like a dealership. People bring problems to us. So, I mean, we don't sell a solution, we fix problems. And so generally what we find is, and we have over 150 consultants that work with all major sales organizations, small sales organizations, and people will show up and say, we have an issue, and it might be a small issue. And I'm going to share more about the revenue growth model in a minute. But the perspective that I'm sharing with you is I've had a chance over my career to see a lot of sales organizations that are struggling. And sometimes it might have to do with sales enablement. It might have to do with value propositions. It might be a merger and acquisition. So we're kind of people that if you have a problem with your car and you go take it to the dealership, it's making a noise, I don't know what's going on. And by the way, if you think you know the answer, you're probably not the right people for us. So we need somebody to help us think this through. And frequently people also need help with change management. We are this type of organization A, and we want to be this type of organization B. So that's the world I come from. And so that's how I'm speaking to you. I've had a very fortunate opportunity to see great sales leaders. And what I'm going to share with you is some of the things that I would say a VP of sales should be thinking like a CRO. And what does that mean? Okay, so that's really the point of view that I'm coming from. So really what I want to share with you is 3 points, okay? Smart end-to-end revenue strategies. Again, you're in charge of these folks. You're in charge of the responsibility about bringing revenue into the company. What leadership things should you be doing? Okay, so let's get smart. So this model is sort of a job description for a chief revenue officer. And at the very top, what we're going to be talking about today is what should the revenue leader be doing other than, a break fix and execution excellence and investments. What should the revenue leader be doing? And I share this with you because at times we've come in contact with chief revenue officers and VPs of sales, and they're stressed out. They're like, this thing's not working. We're not bringing in the growth that the business units are expecting us to bring, and we're not executing against new technologies such as, customers want to interact with us online. And so there's a whole variety of well, what is the right direction to take? And some of us have inherited sales organizations. And I might suggest to you that you may be running sort of like Antiques Roadshow. Well, this sales organization was created in the 80s, and this is how we've always done it. Well, that is going to put you and your company at great risk. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the top here, but you can see all the other pieces here. And these are sort of the pistons that run a sales organization. You got to do revenue segment planning. I'll talk about that. You got to have good value propositions. You got to have engagement and motions, how we interact with customers. Then we need structure. You know this, there are org structures, your channel design, and then we got to have the right head count. And then there's all this management activity. And by the way, this management activity is a bit of a caboose. It's actually making sure that the strategy is working within the structure that you've created. And so these are the things that many of us sort of get absorbed with, how do I hire the right people? And how do I measure them? And how do I compensate them? And by the way, my professional content that I've worked especially in is obviously over in the sales compensation space. So, I've spent 30 years thinking about sales compensation. And, if you ever have questions about that, please reach out to me, okay? All right, so here it is. So the question that we have is the question about number 1. So what is leadership about? Okay, so on the left-hand side, we have a lot of align, execute, and accomplish. And every day, day in and day out, that's what our chief leaders are doing, our chief revenue officers, our VPs of sales. But what I'd like you to start thinking about and add this second drumbeat is identify issues. And that is issues about getting at the market, realign and refocus your resources and gain adoption. So one of the most important things you can do is provide leadership to your revenue team about, we're here, but we're not going to stay here. We're going to go over there in terms of how to start getting revenue in this organization. And I'm going to share with you some steps about how to do that. So as we continue on here, let me share this. This is a model that kind of suggests, well, isn't there a perfect way of managing a sales organization? And I'm going to challenge you and say, no. In fact, I'm going to tell you absolutely that it is a function of your growth rate. So the types of things that you're doing as a revenue leader is going to change with the nature of how your business is functioning. For example, in a startup phase, you're all over the place. You just got to get revenue in the door. And so you're trying to, and it really is kind of a discovery phase, and it's very fluid, and you have multiple things that you're trying to do. And the field organization, the marketing department's all in together working out, well, how do we sell this stuff and what's the right message? And that's a really fun period of time. Okay, but then once you discover why customers buy and what's the right approach to them, you start to scale it up. And that's really what phase 2 is. And so that scaling period is a period in which, well, some people would say you're creating silos. I think they're beneficial at this point. We're going to become really good at calling on big customers. We're going to become really good at outbound telephone selling. And we're just gonna, and if we have 2 people, we're gonna get 4. And if the 4 is working out, we're gonna get 8. And so that's that scaling period in which the sales organization. And so what's important? Onboarding, talent, okay, sales process training, execution excellence. But then all of a sudden, we're not growing. And you go, what's happening here? We're in phase 3. And there's a bunch of things that could happen why we're not growing the way we should be growing. By the way, the way this chart is set up, the middle line is the growth rate of the industry normalized to 0. The curvy line is you. And all of a sudden, somebody's starting to say, we're not growing, but our costs are still increasing. I'll give you a kind of a sad but true implication. If at the national sales meeting, the finance person stands up and talks about profitable selling, you're in the reevaluation phase. You're growing at less than 10%, and finance wants to be on the podium talking to the sales rep. Not good. Okay, so all right. So what happens during this phase? Well, you got to get smarter. You can't have all the expense that you've had in the past, and therefore you may have to reallocate resources. You may have to do rationalization. So and then and at some point, someone's going to say, you know what? This is right at the end of phase 3. Not all business is good business. Only some business is good business. So we need to focus our efforts, and we may need to be doing solution selling, or we may need to open up a new channel. And so that phase optimization is really basically running multiple businesses, multiple revenue segments at the same time. So a quick summary of this chart is it's not exactly you, and you may be kind of in a bunch of places on this chart. But if you're doing all 4 of these things, you're basically in the 4th phase. And the question is, well, what happens? Do you just sail off the back end of this chart? No, it's actually sort of a sphere. You keep going around and around. And so the best revenue leaders understand that different business units and different market segments need different revenue solutions and different types of tools and maybe different types of people. So the idea that one training class for everybody all of a sudden doesn't make sense, or these standalone tech applications is kind of getting in our way. So what I'm suggesting to you is your future is moving on you. It's moving based upon the growth rate of the company. So in the first phase, we're growing at a very high rate, and we're in discovery. In the second phase, we're growing, but at a declining rate. And then the third phase, we're growing at less than 10%. So the sales organization needs to respond to those things and either tighten up their expenses or reallocate resources. And in the 4th phase, you're running a very complicated revenue strategy. So moving on, you can just see here as we go, oh, okay, so tell me what we're doing again, David. All right, in each phase, discovery and scaling in phase 1, execution, enablement. We need a big enablement department when we're in phase 2 because we got to train a lot of people about the stuff that we're doing. And then we have this rationalization activity in phase 3. And then the best thing that we can be doing as a revenue organization is adding value. And maybe that's consultative selling, and maybe that's solution selling, and maybe that's bringing higher value to the customers. Now, I understand if you say, oh, that doesn't really match me. That's okay. But I'm just kind of like plate tectonic theory. There's an underlying movement taking place based upon your growth rate. And sales organizations and revenue teams change based upon your growth rate. So once you have that in your head, you can anticipate your future. And so just a side note, I've presented this chart for years. And I was in a meeting with I named the company, you would go, oh my God, that's a big company. It was the senior people. It was the North American general manager. And I presented this chart, and they go, you have a remarkable, and I was talking about phase 3 particularly. You have a remarkable insight into who we are. And I'm sorry, I don't. It's the chart. The chart hasn't changed at all. So it's really, you're like skiing. You're going like on a run down the hill. You're going in and out of these different phases. And so be careful if somebody shows up at your doorstep with one answer, because it might work in one part of your organization, one part of your sales organization, and it might not work in another. So you can see increased size growth, drive proficiency, improve leverage, gain better focus. Okay. All right. So the takeaway from that is, oh my gosh, one solution doesn't work unilaterally. It works depending upon our growth phase. And that's a very important takeaway from you, because you have to anticipate the future of your organization. So there are many things that we would like to see from a culture point of view. We would like to see our leader sharing the mission of the organization, focusing on talent, ensuring that the culture of the organization is moving along. But even at like this during this phase 3, when all of a sudden, somebody is saying, well, we think the salespeople make too much money, or our cost of selling is too high. Go get survey data and compare us to the market. You need to have leadership that says, it's okay. We're going to do this well. We're not wedded to our past practices and what the market demands and what our business units request of us. We're going to make sure that we're agile and we can adopt. Okay. So that means we're also going to make sure our operations, we listen, we learn, and we make people better. Okay. So, I kind of like the theme I've heard before, some really great leaders is they say to their sales organization, we're a learning organization. Don't think that we're going to do the same thing over and over and over again. We're always learning how to be better. We're learning where our value is. And the bigger question is, like, for your own direct salespeople, where do they belong? They belong where there's risk and uncertainty. So if a customer knows how to buy the product and they're familiar with it, do you really need, with all due respect, a high-priced salesperson that you use during your early phases? Okay. They're better deployed where there is complicated uncertainty in the customers. And as a result of that, they can provide better leadership to their customers. Okay, so let's continue on. So what do you mean end to end? Okay, so I think this is a good template to consider. The template is buyer journey and sales path. Okay, and you've heard many speakers talk about this before, but I think that's a better planning platform than talking about sales jobs, which we'll come back to. But it's better to strip away jobs and just say, okay, well, how does the buyer buy this stuff? And if you were like back to our car dealership, customers already know what they want when they show up. So what's the role of the salesperson is to help backfill that knowledge and help reduce uncertainty and increase assurance. So the buyer journey, as it moves, and particularly in industrial sales and B2B sales, is that your buyers are shifting. They're getting smarter maybe, or they have maybe the purchase they're considering is not immediate. And so this understanding of the buyer journey is, okay, we need to map this. Now you're going to say, wait. All buyers are different. Okay, I hear the challenge. However, I'm going to suggest to you that you're running multiple businesses. You're running multiple revenue segments. So there's one segment doesn't want any help. There's another segment that needs a lot of handholding. So can the same salesperson provide all those solutions? Okay, or do we need separate solutions for them? So that's sort of I think this is the stronger planning tool, is to think in terms of buyer segments. So I'm just going to focus a lot on revenue on the left-hand side here, revenue segments. If I was a sales executive, you're a sales executive, you really have businesses. These businesses are defined by a product population, a buyer population, and a sales access population. So the better planning model, and by the way, when people bring in their car to the dealership, the very first thing that we do is say, tell us about your revenue segments. And I didn't say marketing segments, and I didn't say sales segments, and I didn't say product segments. I said revenue segments. So it's a completely different construct than the idea of how sales segments are, which are usually by size, or product segments, which are usually by technology. So in that sense, you go, oh, okay, so I'm really running a series of businesses, and each business has a population of customers, a family of products, and an access point. It needs its own value proposition. It needs its own tracking of the buyer population. It needs its own coverage model. Once you got that identified, then you can find where there's synergies and say, okay, maybe I can get the same person to deliver messages to dissimilar buyer populations. Now that to me is a great sales enablement objective, not simply being rote or execution excellence, but being able to be flexible and work with customers that may be in one mindset and a different set of customers in another mindset. In fact, your best sales reps do that. Okay. So, a planning model might be, okay, so what is this I-layer model? It's called identify, land, adopt, expand, and renew. So again, this is another way of looking at the sales process, asking the question, for each revenue segments, how are we doing this? And is there a better way of doing it? And how should we align our resources? Now, as you're sitting here, you might be saying, wait. You're going to have me tell the reps that territory that they've been working for years, you're going to do something with it, and you're going to take some of the accounts and put them into, inside sales organization, and then you're going to change the messaging that they have to deliver to customers and maybe call on a different population of customers. Yes. Otherwise, you're going to obsolete that sales organization, because if you stay stable and not change anything like Antiques Roadshow, you're putting, first of all, your job at risk, and obviously the sales organization at risk too. So as you start to lay out these planning tools, and again, I'm not talking about day in and day out thinking about this stuff, but it would be nice to pull together your leadership team, your marketing people, your sales people, your customer service people, after you've gotten direction from your business units, to say, okay, so how are we going to do all these things for these different revenue populations? Well, we're doing pretty good, Dave. So let's pretend, and by the way, this is a great planning exercise. Just say to your planning team, what if nothing existed? What would you do? Oh, you mean I didn't have to worry about current people and all that? Yeah, what would you do? How would you actually organize this? It's a very refreshing thought process, okay? So revenue strategies, I'll cover these quickly. So I'm going to do VP of sales, old way, CRO, new way, okay? Customer lifecycle, kind of a begin and end. Buyer journey, that's the point I was making before. Single channel, maybe multiple channels, okay? So it doesn't always have to go through a salesperson, it can go through multiple channels. No integration between marketing, sales, and service, and there's usually these barriers. And really, the marketing people are sales development reps, folks like that are creating leads for us. We need these people all integrated together, okay? Mass marketing, yeah, I get it. We're pushing messages out, but really, you have enough data now to tailor the messages to your customer populations based upon the revenue segments they're in. Singular roles with little coverage, okay? And then we're going to have, and this is one, again, I'm exploring this and trying to understand how to make this work. When I say we have dynamic roles, we're just not rigid job descriptions. We actually have people that can flex. So if we have a service issue, can we have our salespeople address that service issue and make a team together so that we can address it? So do we have to always have rigid barriers between jobs? And then sales tools, but they're splattered all over the place. So we need to get back and have a total platform of the types of sales tools that we're going to employ to make this model work. So with that, let me share. And by the way, I'm going to encourage you to submit some questions too. Here's what I'm suggesting to you is that you replace obsolete sales model with new revenue acquisition practices. And what does that mean? Well, build a collaborative planning process around numerous viable, diverse revenue segments. Now, hey, I do have a question for you. Ready for this? Who is your most important customer? You go, what? No, think about it. You're the CRO of the company. Who's your most important customer? The business units. You're a service entity to the business units. So rather than yelling at them for their ridiculous campaigns and missed launches of new products and sometimes misdirected marketing efforts, you need to have a joint planning effort with the business units so that your team can be correctly deployed each year. So I believe the best way to think and communicate with people is commit to the person, but not to the position. You're valuable to us. You can be used in a variety of ways, okay? Of course, we're not trying to break your sales organization down and make them have people completely at loss about what their job is. But the more combined your marketing, your marketing development activities, your sales activities are, and your service activities built around buyer populations, revenue segments, buyer populations, and laying out a buyer journey for those. Well, David, you sound like you're turning us into strategists. Yes, I am. Because if you don't do it, who will? Okay, because the marketing segments are not going to help you. Okay, the product segments are not going to help you, and stratified sales segments, big customers, medium customers, does not ask the question: who are our customers, and who are we selling to, and what are we saying to them? So my suggestion is that you get that planning activity joint with your business units, which are your customers, your primary customers, and you help allocate how your resources are going to be applied against various revenue segments. So listen to the words I'm adding to your vocabulary. First of all, sales organizations go through phases. They always do, and they always will. And you need to be able to move with that growth phase, okay? The other thing I'm suggesting to you is that we can't have separate silos of marketing, sales, and service. And you've heard that over and over and over again. But so David, thanks. Now what do I do? The answer is you're planning, the headwaters of a revenue team are revenue segments. And what's a revenue segment? It's an intersect of products, buyers, and how you're going to go to the market. And you might say, I don't want to upset the current sales force if we're talking about this stuff. You owe it to them. You owe it to them to provide leadership 10%, about where we're going in the future. And really what we're looking for is small changes each year. We don't want to flip and sort of break our promises to our people. They are eager. They're eager to be of high value. And so it's your job to migrate the various types of buyers into different types of treatment, and then apply your talent based upon those revenue segments. So focus on the best opportunities to expand profitable business. And remember that phase 4 I was talking about. So not all business is good business. And you can actually do a return on invested sales dollars by saying, this particular business segment that you want us to go after with these products, these are the investments that we have to make. These are the funding that we're going to need to do this. We're going to use our current salespeople, but we need value propositions from you. We need sales playbooks from you. And that's a request that we're having to our business units, and to help execute that. And then, really you need to have, good metrics, very good metrics to show how you're performing by revenue segment. Okay. And then of course I'm saying realign marketing, selling, service resources around the buyer journey by revenue segment. Okay. So you can hear it. So when people bring in their car to our dealership and say, it ain't working, what's the first thing we do? Revenue segment planning. It clarifies immediately. Well, David, our business isn't that complex. Here, let me just give you a challenge. Go take a look at your competitors. How do they go after the customers? Are they using techniques different than you? In fact, in phase 3, when there is a market saturation, the most common challenge is a disruptive channel strategy. It's not a product that you get beat on. You get beat on by a different channel strategy. And if you watch a lot of things that take place in the marketplace, what are they really? What is Amazon really? It's a channel competitor. And so that's really how the brick and mortars got beat. They didn't get beat on the product, they got beat on the channel, the access methodology. So you have to scan the horizon and see how else your customers might want to buy. And then of course, assess and update recruitment, training, and compensation of the revenue talent organization. So in closing, embrace the challenge of supporting multiple revenue segments simultaneously. You have startup, high growth, low growth revenue segments, and then eventually you're going to be running all of these at the same time. So I hope, again, I'm DavidCichelli with the Alexander Group. I hope you came away with some good ideas about, hey, maybe I should, really spool up my planning process. I mean, you're doing a lot. You have execution excellence, you have sales operation challenges. I get it. But are you on the right journey? Are you taking your people in the right direction? That's my supportive and encouraging challenge for you.